What would you do if your own sister abandoned her baby on your doorstep? Your parents coldly refused to help, and 10 years later they all returned, suing you for custody of the child you had raised as your own? When the judge opened a sealed folder, everything changed. Do you dare hear the truth they never wanted revealed? The Child in the Rain, a burden no one wanted. I have replayed that night in my mind more times than I can count, and every time the memory claws its way back, it feels like a story that should have happened to someone else, not to me. Yet it did. It was the kind of night where fate doesn't just knock on your door. It pounds until you can't ignore it, and once you open that door, your life can never go back to what it was before. If you think you know what family means, if you believe blood is enough to keep people together, then I urge you to stay with me until the end. Because what happened to me that October evening will make you question everything you've ever believed about loyalty, love, and the people you trust most. The rain was falling hard, the kind of relentless downpour that makes the streets look like rivers. I had just returned from a 12-hour shift at St. Mary's Hospital. My scrubs were still damp from the hospital air, my hair pulled back in a knot, my body aching for nothing more than a hot shower and sleep. Boston in late October can feel unforgiving, and that night it was. I remember kicking off my shoes, sinking into my worn couch, and pouring myself a glass of cheap red wine. The storm outside became white noise, a reminder that the world was bigger than my exhaustion, bigger than my carefully managed little life. I had no idea that the storm wasn't outside. It was about to come crashing straight into my living room. At 9:30, the doorbell rang. Once. Sharp. Quick. I thought it was a mistake. Deliveries at that hour weren't common. I ignored it. Then it rang again, longer, more insistent this time. The sound sliced through the hum of the storm, through the wine glass halfway to my lips, through the silence of a woman who wanted nothing more than to be left alone. Something in that second chime carried weight, a kind of urgency that didn't belong to a stranger asking for directions. Against my better judgment, I stood, crossed the room, and opened the door. The first thing I saw wasn't a person. It was a shadow, a shape small and fragile against the backdrop of rain. A car seat sat directly on my welcome mat, slick with water. A thin blanket covered something inside. For a second, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. I actually stepped back as if I had stumbled upon a crime scene. My heart was hammering. The city teaches you to be suspicious of anything left on your doorstep. A package, a trap, something dangerous. But as I leaned down and peeled back the corner of that blanket, I realized this was not a package. It was a baby. A real breathing baby, with cheeks flushed from the cold and dark wisps of hair clinging to her forehead. She was impossibly small, impossibly still. My hands trembled as I reached for the folded note tucked against the side of the seat. Even before I opened it, I recognized the handwriting. It was my sister's, Amanda. I unfolded the paper, and the words leapt at me like a knife to the chest. Her name is Lily. I cannot do this. She is yours now. Just 7 words. And with those 7 words, my entire life splintered in half, before and after. I looked up and down the street. Nothing. No figure running away. No headlights in retreat. No shadow hiding in the corners. Just the rain, heavy and merciless, washing away any trace of who had left her there. The silence was unnatural. It was as if the entire city was holding its breath. 1,000 questions screamed inside me. Why here? Why now? Why me? I scooped up the seat, holding it awkwardly as though it contained glass that could shatter with one wrong move. The baby stirred, her face twitching with the kind of innocence that doesn't yet know abandonment. I closed the door behind me, heart pounding, and dialed my sister's number. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. She had vanished. She had placed her daughter at my feet like an unwanted parcel and disappeared into the storm. My second call was to my parents. I thought, no, I believed. They would come rushing. They would understand the gravity, the impossibility of the situation. But when my mother answered, her voice was ice. We told her not to have that baby, she said flatly. She made her choice. Now she's running away from it. Typical Amanda. My father's words were worse. She left her with you, Natalie, not us. That's your burden now. Don't call us again about this." The line went dead, leaving me standing in the dim light of my living room, clutching a crying baby that wasn't mine, hearing the echo of my parents' voices telling me they were finished. In that instant, the message was clear. I was alone. The sound of Lily's wail pulled me back into the present. My apartment was empty of everything a baby might need. No formula, no diapers, no crib. I panicked. I called Edward, my boyfriend, hoping against hope that he would step in. He answered, groggy and irritated. "A baby? Your sister just dumped her kid on you? That's insane, Natalie. You can't raise her. Call social services." "I can't just abandon her," I pleaded. "She's my niece." "This isn't our problem," he said firmly. "Don't get dragged into your sister's drama." And then silence. A silence that told me exactly how much support I would receive from him. So I wrapped Lily tighter in the blanket, grabbed my keys, and drove through the storm to the nearest 24-hour supermarket. I wandered the fluorescent aisles in my damp scrubs, Googling baby formulas on my phone with one hand and pushing a cart with the other. A kind older woman, a night clerk, noticed my frantic searching. She guided me gently, her eyes full of questions I couldn't answer. Together, we gathered the bare essentials: formula, diapers, wipes, a bottle. As she rang up the items, she whispered, "Looks like she's yours now." Those words clung to me, chilling me more than the rain ever could. She's yours now. That first night was chaos, crying, mixing formula with shaking hands, fumbling with diapers. At one point, I placed Lily in an empty dresser drawer lined with blankets because I had nothing else. As I sat on the floor, watching her finally fall asleep, I whispered into the darkness, "I don't know why this happened, but I promise you, I will figure it out. You are safe with me." It was a promise I didn't know how to keep, a vow that felt like stepping into quicksand. Because what I didn't know then, but what you, listening now, will soon discover, is that this wasn't just about a baby abandoned on a doorstep. This was about betrayal, secrets, and a battle that would stretch across years. This was about discovering what family really means when the people who share your blood decide you're expendable. So before you judge me, before you think you understand the choice I made that night, listen to the rest. Because every secret has a price, and every promise has a consequence. And the storm that began on my doorstep was only the beginning. A promise in the dark, a family born of choice. If the first night was chaos, the following weeks were a labyrinth with no map. Every hour tested me. Every cry from that tiny girl reminded me of what I didn't know, of what I had lost, of how unprepared I was for what had been thrust into my arms. But it also reminded me of something else, something I couldn't quite name at the time, a bond that was already weaving itself into the fabric of my soul. The world did not stop because I suddenly had a baby. Bills piled up, the hospital expected me back, and the city outside carried on with its indifference. I had 2 weeks of emergency leave, granted only because my record at St. Mary's was spotless. But even as I held Lily in my arms, I knew time was ticking. What happens when the leave ends? What happens when there's no safety net left? What happens when everyone around you insists you should give up, but your heart whispers that giving up would destroy you? The truth is, I was terrified. My parents had shut their doors, my boyfriend had walked away, and I had no experience. And yet, when Lily's eyes opened in the early hours of the morning, when her tiny fingers clutched my sleeve as if I were the only anchor she had in this vast and hostile world, I realized I was all she had. The fear was still there, but it had to share space with something else: determination. But determination does not pay rent, and love alone cannot silence judgment. The voices around me grew louder. "This isn't your child, Natalie. Don't chain yourself to a mistake that isn't yours to fix." My colleagues, though sympathetic, quietly advised me to consider other options. My parents' silence was its own weapon. Their absence, a reminder that they had abandoned not just Amanda's child, but me too. It was in those moments when everyone else pulled away that I felt a line being drawn. Not in sand, but in stone. I whispered into the dark apartment over the sound of Lily's restless breathing. "You're mine now. Whether they like it or not, you are mine." Perhaps you've asked yourself this question before. What truly makes someone a parent? Is it the blood that runs through a child's veins, or the sleepless nights spent rocking them to rest? Is it biology, or is it sacrifice? I learned quickly that love demands sacrifice. My savings evaporated under the weight of diapers, formula, doctor visits, and moving costs when I realized my cramped one-bedroom could not hold the life that had suddenly expanded inside it. I found a small two-bedroom in Cambridge, closer to the school where I would later transfer for steadier hours. Every corner of that apartment bore the marks of change. A crib crammed into the corner of the bedroom, secondhand toys lined up like a mismatched army, and sticky notes covering my refrigerator with reminders about feeding times and pediatric appointments. My life had been neat once. Now it was chaos. But it was our chaos. It wasn't all bleak. There were people who surprised me. My neighbors, the Santiago family down the hall, became a lifeline, teaching me tricks for soothing Lily when colic stretched nights into endless marathons of tears. My coworkers threw a makeshift baby shower, handing down items their children had outgrown. Those small gestures lit candles in the darkness, reminding me that not everyone believed I was doomed to fail. Still, shadows lingered. My parents visited only a handful of times in that first year, and every visit felt like judgment disguised as concern. My mother would look around my cluttered apartment, her lips pursed, before delivering her critiques. "She cries too much. You don't know how to calm her. And look at you, exhausted, falling behind in your career." My father never even tried to hold Lily. He would stand at the door, arms crossed, asking in a voice lined with impatience, "Any word from Amanda?" He never said her name with softness, never once asked about Lily's milestones, never once looked at the little girl as though she mattered. And yet, Lily was thriving. Against all odds, she smiled, she grew, she learned to say Nana, the name that stuck, the name she gave me, like the name that told me she didn't care about biology. She cared about who showed up. That one word was worth more than every lost dollar, every sleepless night, every sacrifice. But peace never lingers for long, does it? Even as we settled into a rhythm, even as Lily became the center of my universe, I felt the tension rising like a storm building far off the coast. I knew Amanda was still out there. I didn't know where or what shape her life had taken, but I knew that one day she might come back. And when she did, what would happen? Would the courts care that I had given up my 20s to raise her daughter? Would my parents' cold words, "She's your burden now," suddenly twist into an argument that Lily should never have been mine in the first place? And so, the unanswered questions became the quiet heartbeat of my days. What if Amanda returns? What if my parents choose her side? What if Lily one day asks me why she doesn't have what other children have? Grandparents who care? A mother who stayed? Each question was a knife I learned to carry close to my chest. Ladies and gentlemen, before I go deeper, a warm welcome to you all from Dran. If this story already grips your heart, if you feel the tension in every word, then I invite you to subscribe to Dran. Your support gives us the strength to keep creating stories that challenge, that reveal, that move you. Stay with me, because this story is only just beginning. And what comes next will shake the very foundation of what we call family. The years passed faster than I could have imagined. Kindergarten, first drawings taped proudly to the fridge, movie nights with pillow forts, birthday cakes made by neighbors who had become more like family than my own blood. Every milestone was a triumph we shared, a small victory carved out of the ruins Amanda had left behind. Lily grew into herself, bright, creative, inquisitive. She loved science, loved drawing, loved asking questions that left me scrambling for answers. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And yet each time my parents visited, their presence was like smoke in a room, stifling, choking, impossible to ignore. My mother's gifts were always wrong, a reminder of how little she noticed the real child before her. "She should be in ballet," she would insist, handing Lily another tutu, ignoring the way her granddaughter reached instead for the toy dinosaurs on the floor. My father remained distant, never engaging, his gaze forever searching for a daughter who had abandoned her child, rather than looking at the one who was raising her. By the time Lily turned 5, she had her own way of describing us. One afternoon, she handed me a picture she had drawn, 2 figures, one tall, one small, standing inside a giant red heart. "That's us," she said proudly. "We're a heart family, not a blood family." I blinked back tears. Out of the mouth of a child came the truth I had always known but had never dared to speak aloud. We were a family of choice, not of blood. And perhaps that is why the thought of losing her one day, of Amanda sweeping back in, armed with excuses and apologies, haunted me even more. Because choice can be fragile. So I ask you, what would you do if the one who abandoned her own child suddenly wanted her back? Would you believe her tears? Would you forgive the years of silence? Or would you, like me, feel the ground beneath you start to tremble, sensing the storm that is coming, the storm that will force you to fight harder than you ever thought possible? Stay with me, because that storm was closer than I ever imagined. And when it arrived, it wasn't just Amanda I had to face. It was the betrayal of my own parents and the revelation of truth so dark they nearly tore everything apart. The sister returns, a past that demands its child back. For almost 10 years, Amanda was nothing more than a ghost, a whisper, a shadow, a question mark I couldn't answer whenever Lily asked, "Where is she now?" 10 years of silence. 10 years of raising a child who had only me. And then on an ordinary Tuesday evening, the phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, a voice I hadn't heard in a decade. "Hello, Natalie. It's me, Amanda." Do you know the kind of silence that follows words you never thought you'd hear again? The silence where your blood runs cold, where you know in your bones that everything you've built is about to be shaken? That was the silence in my living room. My hands tightened on the phone as if holding it too loosely would let her slip away again. She said she was in New York, that she wanted to see me. She sounded calm, measured, different, and against my better judgment, I agreed. The next afternoon, I walked into a cafe in Manhattan, a place chosen for its neutral air, and there she was, Amanda. But not the Amanda I remembered. Gone was the wild-eyed girl with unbrushed hair and trembling hands. Sitting before me was a woman polished to perfection, hair in a sleek bob, blazer tailored, nails immaculate. She carried an expensive leather bag that spoke of success and stability. Her smile was rehearsed, her voice softer than I remembered. And beside her sat a man I had never met, Thomas. He rose when I arrived, shook my hand with a practiced grip, and introduced himself with the easy confidence of a man used to persuading people. They looked like a magazine spread for redemption, the reformed sister and her supportive husband. And yet something in my gut told me the performance had only just begun. We exchanged pleasantries, small talk. But then Amanda leaned forward, her eyes shining with something I couldn't quite read. "I've been sober for 7 years, she said, voice trembling just enough to sound human. "I've rebuilt my life. I'm married now, and I have a career in design. And I want to be Lily's mother again." The words cut through the clatter of coffee cups, louder than the storm outside that had followed me into the city. I stared at her, at Thomas, at the life she had painted, and I asked myself, what gives her the right to walk back in after a decade, to erase the sleepless nights, the scraped knees, the tears, the whispered promises I had kept for Lily when she was too young to understand why her mother never came back? Thomas spoke next, his tone polished, persuasive. "We can give her so much, Natalie. A house with a yard, a stable family, a future, things you've struggled to provide." His smile was sympathetic, but his words were a knife wrapped in silk. And then came the question I knew was hanging in the air, waiting to be thrown like a grenade. Wasn't it better for Lily to grow up in a real family? I wanted to laugh, but instead I whispered, "A real family? I have been her family every single day you weren't here. Where were you when she had nightmares? When she cried for hours with a fever? When she drew pictures of 2 figures inside a heart because she knew love mattered more than blood?" Amanda blinked, tears glistening. Thomas reached for her hand. It was the perfect tableau of sincerity, but I couldn't ignore the flicker of something darker behind his eyes. Control, calculation. That night, driving home through the city, the weight of what had just unfolded pressed down on me. Was this just a meeting, or was it the beginning of a battle? Weeks later, the answer arrived. Not with Amanda, but with my parents. They called, insisting I bring Lily to Sunday dinner. Against my instincts, I agreed, hoping perhaps for a truce, for something human between us. The moment I stepped into their home, I knew. Amanda and Thomas were already there, seated comfortably, as though they belonged, as though the past decade hadn't existed. My mother fluttered around Amanda like she was royalty returned from exile. My father sat tall, arms folded, radiating pride that had never once been directed at me. The meal was unbearable. My mother praised Amanda's recovery, her success, her transformation. My father declared, "She has turned her life around. It's time Lily was with her real mother." Do you know what betrayal feels like when it comes not from strangers, but from the very people meant to protect you? It doesn't sting. It sears. It burns through the walls you thought were strong enough to hold you. I asked them how long they'd been in contact with Amanda. The answer nearly made me drop my fork. 3 years, my father admitted. They had known. All this time. They had spoken to her, supported her, while standing in my apartment criticizing me, pretending they were still in the dark. So tell me, what do you do when you discover the family who abandoned you once has been quietly plotting against you for years? On the drive home, Lily sat in the back seat, quiet in a way that scared me more than tears ever could. Finally, she whispered, "Mom, Grandma said I might go live with Aunt Amanda. Is that true?" Her voice shook. My heart shattered. I pulled the car over, turned to face her. "No, sweetheart, you live with me. That's your home." "But she said Aunt Amanda is my real mum," Lily murmured. I swallowed hard, fighting the rage and the fear. "Listen to me. You and I, we're a family. We always have been. And no one is going to take you away from me. Cross my heart." That night, Lily tossed in her sleep, whispering, "Don't take me. Don't take me." I held her close, swore silently into the dark that I would fight with everything I had to protect her. And if you think the storm had reached its peak, if you think this was the worst of it, you're wrong. The real battle hadn't even begun. Because soon a letter would arrive, a letter that would drag me into a courtroom, pit me against my sister, my parents, and the man who smiled too perfectly. But before I tell you how that unfolded, let me pause to thank you for listening. Ladies and gentlemen, Dran warmly welcomes you. If this story has you on edge, if you feel the tension rising with every word, subscribe to Dran. Support us so we can continue to bring you stories that dig deep into the hidden corners of family, loyalty, and betrayal. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. So I ask you, who truly deserves to be called a mother? The woman who gave birth, or the one who stayed? The one who vanished, or the one who carried the weight of promises made in the dead of night? Think about it, because the answer to that question would soon decide the fate of my entire world. And as the days grew darker, as lawyers were called and evidence gathered, I realized something chilling. This wasn't just about Amanda's tears or Thomas's smile. There were secrets underneath their polished surface. Secrets tied not to love, but to money, inheritance, and greed. The battle lines had been drawn, and the war for Lily had only just begun. The sealed evidence, truth laid bare in court, then. The courthouse was colder than I expected, though maybe that was just the chill inside me. The walls towered above, stone and glass pressing down on my chest as if to remind me, this is where everything ends or begins again. I had walked into that courtroom with trembling hands hidden inside a navy suit that I bought just for this day. It wasn't just fabric, it was armor. Because when you're standing against your sister, your parents, and their polished lawyer, you can't afford to walk in naked with only love as your defense. Amanda sat across the aisle, pristine in her floral dress, her face composed with a kind of tragic beauty rehearsed for effect. Beside her, Thomas wore a suit so sharp it could cut glass. His hands rested calmly on the table, but his eyes scanned the room like a predator waiting to strike. Behind them, my parents perched stiffly, as if waiting for the glory of seeing Amanda restored and me reduced to dust. The judge entered, a woman with silver hair and a voice that left no room for pretense. "This court is here to decide custody of Lily Morgan," she said firmly. "The sole concern of this court is the best interest of the child." And just like that, the stage was set. Amanda went first. Her testimony painted her as a phoenix rising from ashes. She told the story of addiction, recovery, marriage, stability. She cried at the right moments, smiled when she needed to, and spoke of a mother's love as though it had been waiting untouched for a decade. Thomas followed, promising college funds, vacations, the kind of life my salary as a school nurse could never provide. He spoke about his ability to give Lily a future I could not. And when my parents testified, their words were knives. They claimed I had isolated Lily, cut her off from her family, raised her in a bubble of bitterness. They said Amanda deserved a second chance. Do you know what it's like to hear your own parents tell a room full of strangers that you are unfit to raise the child you've loved since infancy? It's a kind of betrayal that echoes in your bones, a wound deeper than any blade. Their lawyer attacked me with precision. My finances, my long hours, my lack of a husband, each became a weapon to show I was inadequate. Isn't it true you work 2 jobs, Miss Parker? Isn't it true you rent an apartment rather than own a home? Isn't it true you've remained single, unable to offer Lily the stability of 2 parents? Each question was barbed, designed not for truth, but for spectacle. And then it was my turn. I spoke of nights rocking Lily when she burned with fever, of mornings when she clutched my hand before school, of drawings taped to our refrigerator declaring us a heart family. I described her laughter, her resilience, her art, her dreams. I told them I was not perfect, that I had stumbled, that I had sacrificed promotions, relationships, sleep. But love is not perfection. It is persistence. And I persisted every day for 10 years. The teachers testified next, her counselor, her doctor. Each one spoke of Lily's thriving, her security, her deep bond with me. They called me mom in everything but biology. And for a moment, I felt the tide shift. For a moment, I believed truth could be louder than performance. But court is not just about truth. It is about evidence. It is about what you can prove. And that's when Julia, my attorney, reached into her briefcase and pulled out a sealed folder, a folder that had nearly bled me dry to compile, a folder of secrets. She placed it on the judge's desk with quiet gravity. The judge opened it. Her eyes moved across the documents, her brow furrowed, her lips pressed thin. Then she looked up, her voice sharper than before. "Counsel, approach the bench." The room shifted. Tension coiled tighter. Amanda's face went pale, Thomas's jaw clenched, and my parents exchanged nervous glances. What was in that folder was about to turn their careful performance to ash. The judge's voice carried through the silence. This evidence directly contradicts multiple statements made by the petitioners. It indicates financial motives tied to locating Lily's biological father, who recently inherited a substantial estate. It also shows that Mr. and Mrs. Parker, she nodded at my parents, have been in contact with Amanda for 3 years, despite their sworn testimony suggesting otherwise. The air snapped like a wire pulled too tight. My father shifted in his seat. My mother's hands trembled. Amanda turned toward Thomas, her eyes wide with dawning horror. The mask slipped, and for a heartbeat, the courtroom saw not redemption but desperation. The judge continued. There are messages here suggesting that the custody petition is not rooted in Lily's best interests, but in potential financial gain. Gasps rippled across the room. Amanda stammered that she hadn't known. Thomas tried to speak, but the judge cut him off. You would be wise, Mr. Richards, to consult your attorney before saying more. And there it was. The twist that none of them had prepared for. Their golden narrative cracked, shattered, revealed for what it was, greed dressed as love. For a moment, my heart thundered in hope, but fear wrapped itself around me just as quickly. Because what if it wasn't enough? What if even the truth could not outweigh the blood tie? The judge called a recess to review the folder further. The room emptied into a hallway, heavy with silence. Amanda sat with her head in her hands. Thomas whispered sharply in her ear. My parents stood apart, shame written in the slump of their shoulders. And I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe, clutching the last strands of hope. Do you believe in justice? Do you believe that when all the lies are stripped away, truth will stand strong enough to protect what you love? I wanted to believe. But in that moment, I was terrified. When court resumed, the judge's voice was steady, but her eyes were steel. She spoke of betrayal, of perjury, of the dangers of uprooting a child from the only stable home she had known. She declared that Lily would remain with me, her guardian and her mother, in every way that mattered. She granted Amanda supervised visitation, but nothing more. The relief came like a flood, too heavy to hold back. My knees nearly gave way. Tears burned my eyes, but I held them back because I needed to be strong when I saw Lily again. It was over. The storm had broken. But scars, I knew, would remain. And if you've stayed with me through this storm, if your heart raced when the truth came out, if you felt the chill of betrayal and the fire of hope, please take a moment now. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like. It may seem like a small action, but for us, it's a huge encouragement that fuels our passion to bring you even more captivating real-life stories. Because this story isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who has ever fought to protect someone they love, everyone who has been betrayed by blood and saved by choice. And though the judge's gavel had fallen, the echoes of that day would follow me forever. So tell me, what would you do, standing in that courtroom, knowing the future of a child rested on whether truth could defeat blood, wealth, and lies? Would you still believe love was enough? That did. And love won. Blood or heart, the end of a broken family. When the judge's gavel fell for the final time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: breath. A full, deep, unbroken breath that wasn't tangled with fear. But the moment of triumph wasn't fireworks or applause. It was quieter, a slow release, like unclenching a fist I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. The storm had passed, but I was standing among its wreckage, and the task ahead was no less daunting. Rebuilding, not just for me, but for Lily. When I picked her up from her art teacher's house, she ran into my arms, her small frame trembling with a question she hadn't dared to ask. "Do I still get to stay with you?" Her eyes searched mine, wide with hope but shadowed by fear. I dropped to my knees, held her face in both hands, and whispered the only truth that mattered. "Yes, sweetheart, always. We are still a family, just like we've always been." She exhaled, her whole body sagging into relief. "You promised," she whispered. "You cross your heart promised." And I held her tighter than ever, whispering back, "And I kept it." That evening, we celebrated with the simplest feast, pizza and ice cream, the kind of dinner that, under other circumstances, might feel ordinary. But that night, it was a victory banquet, a declaration that joy could live even in the shadow of betrayal. As Lily smeared chocolate on her cheeks and giggled over sprinkles, I realized that the greatest wealth we had wasn't in bank accounts or square footage. It was right there, her laughter, our bond, the fragile but unbreakable sanctuary of love. Still, victory came with scars. The betrayal of my parents lingered like a bitter taste, and I knew Lily sensed it too. In the weeks that followed, I met them in neutral places, without her. I asked the questions that had burned inside me. How could you lie under oath? How could you choose Amanda's story over the truth you knew? Their answers were evasive, defensive, empty. And though part of me still longed for reconciliation, I knew something had shifted forever. Blood could not excuse betrayal. If they wanted to remain in Lily's life, it would be under strict boundaries. No undermining, no lies, no manipulation. For the first time, I realized I had the power to set those terms, and I clung to it. Lily, too, needed healing. The nightmares faded slowly, replaced by quiet questions asked in the dark. Why didn't she want me? Why did Grandma say I wasn't yours? Each question broke me, but I answered with honesty and love. Amanda was very sick when you were little, but I wanted you, every single day. That makes us family. And in time, those answers became her truth. Through therapy, through art, through endless reassurance, she began to rebuild the trust the court battle had shaken. Amanda's presence remained a complicated shadow. At first, her visits were supervised, awkward, careful. Thomas faded quickly from the picture, his interest vanishing as soon as the financial motives dissolved. Amanda, however, surprised me. She came alone. She brought small, thoughtful gifts, sketchbooks, paint sets, not toys bought in haste, but things chosen for the child she was learning to know. And one evening, months later, over coffee, she finally said the words I hadn't realized I'd been waiting for. "You're a better mother to her than I ever could have been. Even if I'd been healthy, even if I'd stayed." I didn't forgive her in that moment, not completely. But I felt something loosen inside me. The fight wasn't about erasing Amanda. It was about affirming Lily's right to stability and love. And slowly, Amanda became not a rival, but something closer to an aunt. A piece of Lily's story, but not the one holding the pen. As life settled into rhythm again, opportunities opened. I earned a promotion to District Health Services Coordinator, a position that paid better while keeping family-friendly hours. With that stability, I moved us into a modest house with a small garden where Lily could finally grow the sunflowers she'd begged for. Watching her dig into the earth with her tiny hands, planting something that would rise tall and bright, felt symbolic. We, too, were planting anew. And Lily grew. She thrived. At 11, she made me a card that nearly undid me. To my mom, who chose me every day, it said in careful handwriting, "Biology makes relatives, but love makes families." I cried that night, not with sorrow, but with gratitude for the unexpected path that had given me the greatest gift of my life. You see, the twist of my story isn't that I lost my sister and my parents in the fight. It's that I gained something greater. The certainty that family is not defined by blood, but by choice, by sacrifice, by the daily act of staying when others leave. And isn't that the truth so many of us forget? That love is not measured by DNA, but by presence, by persistence, by the willingness to keep showing up even when it's hard. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Amanda had never left Lily on my doorstep that rainy night. Would I have the life I thought I wanted? A career climbing, a house bought with Mark, vacations unchecked by daycare costs? Maybe. But it would have been a life without Lily. And when I weigh it now, there's no contest. The unexpected, the unchosen path gave me everything I didn't know I needed. And perhaps that is the lesson here, that the families we build in the ruins of broken promises can be stronger than the ones we were born into. That love, when chosen, when fought for, is more enduring than obligation. As I sit here now, watching Lily sketch at our kitchen table, the evening sun spilling across her paper, I feel peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't deny the scars, but wears them as proof of survival. We fought, we endured, we stayed. And in staying, we won. So if you've followed me to this end, let me leave you with this thought. What is family truly? Is it the name on a birth certificate, or is it the arms that hold you at night, the voice that reassures you in the dark, the person who keeps their cross-your-heart promise when everyone else walks away? For me, the answer is clear. Family is love. Family is choice. Family is who shows up, again and again, when it matters most. And maybe for you listening now, there is someone in your life who isn't bound to you by blood, but by love. Maybe you are someone's chosen family. And if so, hold on to that truth. Because it may not look like the stories we're told as children, but it's real. It's powerful. And it's enough. That night, as Lily leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I'm glad it was you," I realized something simple but profound. The story had ended, but our life together was only beginning. And that, more than any courtroom victory, was the true resolution. When I look back on this journey, it feels like walking through fire and somehow coming out not only alive, but stronger, steadier, and more certain of who I am and what family truly means. It began with betrayal, a child left on a doorstep, a family that turned its back, and a world that expected me to crumble under the weight. Yet, within that heartbreak was also the seed of something far greater. Through sleepless nights, endless sacrifices, and a bond forged in the ordinary moments of life, Lily and I created a love that defied biology, wealth, and even the cold calculations of the courtroom. What this story revealed is not simply the pain of abandonment or the drama of a custody battle. It's the resilience that comes when you stand for what's right, even when the odds are against you. It's the realization that love is not fragile. It is unyielding when chosen day after day. And though the scars of betrayal remain, they have become reminders of survival rather than wounds of defeat. The lesson here is profound, and it extends far beyond one family's struggle. We often grow up believing that family is defined by blood, by tradition, by the names written on paper. But life has a way of showing us otherwise. Family is not always given. It can be built, chosen, and protected with unshakable loyalty. Sometimes, the ones who hurt us most are those we expected to love us, and the ones who truly save us are those who step forward when everyone else steps away. So what can you take from this? Look around you. Who shows up for you, again and again, not out of obligation, but out of choice? Who keeps their promises, even the smallest ones? And ask yourself, are you showing up for someone in that way? Because in the end, the measure of our lives isn't in titles or bloodlines, but in the love we give and the love we protect. If you're facing your own trials, let this story remind you. Strength doesn't come from having an easy path. It comes from choosing to keep walking, even when the road is steep and lonely. Love is not weakened by hardship. It is proven by it. And if you fight for the ones who matter, even when it costs you everything, you will discover a bond that no court, no betrayal, no lie can ever break. And now, I want to extend a heartfelt invitation to you. Join the Dran community, where stories like this come alive, not just to entertain, but to inspire, to provoke thought, and to remind us of the strength hidden in ordinary people. Be part of this family we're building together. And if this story resonated with you, if it stirred something deep inside, please subscribe to Dran. It may seem like a small action, but for us, it's the fuel that keeps us going. The encouragement that drives us to create even more powerful, unforgettable stories for you. Because the journey doesn't end here. It's only the beginning, and we want you with us every step of the way.